In almost every country in the world except China, the top two phone companies are Samsung and Apple. Even in Samsung's home turf here in Korea, you'll see iPhones basically everywhere you go, especially among young people. Apple has such a cultural stronghold on Korean Gen Z that 60 to 70% of 18 to 29-year-olds use iPhone, which is pretty insane. It's not just iPhones either, you'll see so many young people here with MacBooks, Apple Watches, AirPods, and everything else. So just like in the US, the Apple cultural lock-in is definitely also here in Korea. But even though Apple specifically dominates Gen Z and younger people, as a whole, Samsung is still much more dominant overall with about 70% smartphone market share across the country. Unlike the US, there's no iMessage lock-in happening since everyone just uses KakaoTalk to text, send pictures, get banking alerts, make reservations and appointments, and just a ton of different things. iPhone will probably continue to eat away at Samsung's market share here, but there's no iMessage lock-in to begin with, and there are actually a ton of practical, useful advantages to using a Samsung phone here in Korea that not a lot of people outside of Korea know about. So let me take you through the major ones and show you how Samsung still has a strong chokehold on the Korean smartphone market. The biggest number one thing has got to be Samsung Pay, or now mostly called Samsung Wallet, which is basically the default mobile payment solution here in Korea instead of something like Google Pay or Apple Pay. This is all due to the fact that Korea's payment systems are all set up for MST instead of NFC. Unlike NFC, MST lets your phone simulate the magnetic strip on a credit or debit card, so you can tap to pay at any old or new payment terminal regardless of NFC support. Apple Pay and Google Pay are only set up for NFC systems, while Samsung Wallet supports both NFC and MST. While a lot of the shops and businesses here technically do have NFC payment terminals, they're still not everywhere, and even if they have them, it's often disabled. Apple Pay support is definitely growing in Korea, but with Apple only supporting Hyundai-specific credit cards due to lack of financial partners here, concerns about fees from the financial industry, and with their unreliable coverage across the country, there's just a lot more reliability and assurance when relying on Samsung Wallet instead. While Samsung phones in a lot of other countries don't come with MST on board anymore, all the ones sold in Korea come with it. So it's not just an Android versus iOS thing here, it's really a Samsung versus everyone else because Samsung's payment system is the only one that works everywhere. Everywhere includes public transit. The payment processors for Korea's subway, bus, and even taxi payment systems have partnerships with Samsung and no one else as of right now. So the only tap-to-pay mobile payment service that works with public transit is Samsung Pay. With Korea's public transit system being a unified service across the entire country, Samsung Wallet will work for public transit everywhere you go here. In Korea, digital IDs for national IDs and driver's licenses are available on both Android and iOS, and they're accepted nationwide including domestic flights, hotels, banks, and government offices. So with Samsung Wallet compatible with all payments that you do in person, including public transit, and mobile IDs being nationally accepted as a viable form of ID, there really is no need to bring around a separate wallet when your Samsung phone can do all that for you. This is such a good convenience that there's not a strong argument against using Samsung phones here. Even for someone like me who switches phones constantly, trying all the new stuff from Xiaomi, Nothing, and other brands, I still find myself defaulting back to Samsung. Not because it's the most exciting piece of tech, but because it's the one that's the most convenient for my life living here in Korea. Plus, Samsung's product ecosystem is especially stickier here in Korea. Samsung appliances, smart home products, TVs, tablets, watches, and everything else are practically dominant here. All these devices can be linked through Samsung services like SmartThings. What I found pretty surprising here is that unlike any other country, Samsung laptops are very popular here. Even in cafes full of young people using MacBooks, you'll see a respectable amount of Samsung laptops. I personally don't think Samsung laptops provide that great of a value for their price, but Samsung laptops have always been pretty common here, so it seems like people go with what they're familiar with. While there's not a ton of ecosystem advantages of Samsung laptops over non-Samsung Windows laptops, you still get quick share, screen mirroring, SmartThings integrations, and continuity features. So it's really easy to make the decision of, hey, I have a Samsung laptop, why don't I just get a Samsung phone too to stay in the ecosystem? There's also the whole discussion of support. With Samsung stores all over Korea, it's really easy to get repair or other support for Samsung devices. Just like how you can just walk into an Apple store and get support at a Genius Bar, you can basically do the same thing with Samsung support centers here. No need to mail in anything, just go in and get it done, sometimes within the same day, which is super convenient. Other than Apple, there's no other phone OEM here that provides that level of support. It's also worth pointing out that since Samsung phones have been dominant here for so long, for a lot of people, there's just a lot of familiarity with sticking with Samsung no matter how nice and trendy iPhones look. Just like how it's hard for iPhone users to switch to Android, it's a hassle for a lot of Samsung users to drop all their advantages here in Korea to go for iPhone instead. Then there's also a bit of that national pride here since Samsung is a Korean company, and even though it's not the main reason people buy their phones, it's definitely something some people do think about when choosing between Samsung and Apple. But even with all these factors, Samsung's dominance isn't guaranteed forever. Like I said earlier, Apple is definitely winning the culture game with younger people. If you're under the age of 30 in Korea, owning an iPhone is becoming the default just like in the US. iPhones just have a more design focus, camera focus, and clean vibe that young people are super drawn into. I personally don't think iPhones have the best camera systems, knowing what I know as a techie and actually doing side-by-side samples, but most people don't have that same frame of reference, and cultural perception is much more important to them. Not only that, the Apple ecosystem is definitely on the rise here. Apple Pay is nowhere near as available as Samsung Pay here, but more and more businesses are supporting NFC payments by the day. There's a lot of talks behind the scenes with Apple making more partnerships with finance companies and banks, so I can definitely see Samsung slowly losing their edge in contactless payments. Then of course there's AirDrop, which is so much more convenient than sending photos over a chat app. Gen Z here are already using this to transfer photos over KakaoTalk, considering how direct and easy it is to share photos with their friends. If you go to cafes in hip neighborhoods or university streets, you'll see that most of the laptops here are MacBooks or even iPads. And if you're already using a MacBook, getting an iPhone just makes sense. While Samsung flagship phones are technically cheaper to get than iPhones on average because they drop in value much quicker, that pricing gap isn't really a barrier for most people. A lot of people here take advantage of installment plans, so the difference between a $800 Galaxy phone and a $1,000 iPhone is totally negligible on a monthly bill. Also, since some Samsung phones are still priced just as high as iPhones and Apple has its more premium reputation, there's this perception that you're not getting as good of a deal if you go with Samsung. That, combined with Apple's growing resale value on their secondhand market, makes owning an iPhone even better for a lot of people here. And if you think about it, since most teens and young adults will start their smartphone ownership with an iPhone, they won't be as familiar with the advantages of owning a Samsung phone here since they never used it and their friends don't have them either. So they'll get familiar with iOS, iCloud for their photos and videos, and the general ecosystem. And when they're older, it'll be really easy to just keep using iPhones since this is what they're familiar with and they're locked into it. So what does the smartphone market look like here in Korea in the next 5 years? It honestly depends on how fast Apple can localize and how much Samsung innovates and rebrands domestically. If NFC truly becomes a universal payment method here, and if Apple is adopted into Korea's public transit system, that could be a huge accelerating dagger into Samsung's relatively stable dominance. But at the same time, Samsung already dominates so many aspects of life here, not just with appliances and devices, but also with credit cards, insurance, and even apartment buildings. With better polish over their product lines and really targeted, successful branding efforts with clear advantages over Apple, they could have a chance to reverse the growing iPhone trend here among young people. Without any significant big moves from either side, I think it'll just be a slow decline in Samsung phone market share, with iPhones eventually getting on par in unit sales and percentage-wise. Whatever happens, even though this is Samsung's home country, Korea is a really interesting smartphone market to watch right now. With how iPhones are perceived right now for younger generations, Samsung might actually eventually lose their home advantage, which is pretty crazy to think about. Korea and Samsung might need to start looking at what happened in China to see how Chinese brands took back their control over the Chinese phone market. For now though, there's still a clear reason why Samsung is still dominant for Koreans. They're the only phones that can replace your entire wallet, there's a whole mobile and home-based ecosystem that many Koreans invest into, and there's a brand familiarity of Samsung being a homegrown brand. Even as the presence of iPhones keeps growing here by sales and by culture, it's pretty easy to say that Samsung phones still provide better convenience in Korea for now. Let me know what your daily driver is and what the smartphone situation is like in your country. I'd love to hear all the different smartphone culture wars going on all over the world. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.